Good morning. Welcome. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Let's see if okay, there we go. Now we're moving. Okay. Hope everybody had a nice evening. Welcome, everybody. Good morning. We're going to talk a little bit this morning about how to make patches and do a little bit of editing on the machine, as well as a little embroidery software editing. Just going to cover a little bit of everything as we learn how to make a patch. All right. We're just going to jump right in because I have lots to share today on the topic. So let's talk about how to make patches with our embroidery machine. So first of all, what is a patch? And why would you make a patch? Okay. So a patch can be made and used for hard to hoop items, things that maybe you're not comfortable embroidering on. You can use a patch to cover up a mistake, use a patch to cover a hole, and we're all into the retro look here, so why not bring back patches and flair to bring a little bit of the retro back into society. Oops. Wrong direction there. So a patch is basically, for those of you that have been embroidering a while, is a freestanding applique. Okay, it's designed to stand on its own after it is out of the hoop. Okay, you can make pretty much almost any design an applique. Okay, with embroidery software, editing, creating patches can be endless. We're actually going to look at some of the editing features that are on the Bernina Plus models. So that's going to be the 500, the 590, the 700, 790, and the 880 with those particular features today. And I will touch a little bit on embroidery software. This also can be done in Bernina Toolbox. So it's can be done a little bit of everywhere. Yes, good morning, everybody. Welcome. Welcome. So the first stabilizer that we're going to use is going to be Aquamesh. Okay, many of you as an embroiderers are very familiar with Aquamesh. Okay, it is what we use to create standalone lace. Okay, it's lightweight, can be washed away in lukewarm water, and it's not sensitive to humidity, which means that you don't need to leave it sealed up and away from humidity and have to worry about it starting to disintegrate on you. We're also going to look at a product called Fusion Seal. And Fusion Seal, while it is considered, it's not really a stabilizer, okay? It is an after embroidery product, okay? So we actually use this, it's a clear iron-on film that we apply to the wrong side of the embroidery to then use to fuse it to the other, to whatever you are. And no sewing is required with Fusion Seal. Okay, so designed to applique, you can use it for fabric. It's a permanent bond and can be washed without a problem. Okay, so this is the item that we will use after we get the embroidery finished. There's also the option of using some fiber form inside your patch if you're looking for a little more rigidness to your patch. You can use fiber form to inside your underneath your fabric of your patch to give it, I don't know, a little bit of a thicker feel. And so we'll talk about where you could use fiberform as well. So to create a design or to create a patch, first you need the base of your patch. You need some sort of applique design that has a satin stitch around the edge. Okay, so for example, we have this circle and this hexagon that you see here, and then you see the other two images are patches that are already been created. So the already created ones are going to require you to use a little bit of software to remove what is already there and put in what you want on the patch in that aspect. So you can very easily alter an already existing patch to be what you want it to be, especially if there's not a shape that you can find or anything along that lines. So all of these patches use a fabric as a base, okay? And then we embroider, and then we satin stitch around the edge, and then we remove the stabilizer. So we're going to take this patch that says piece here, and we're going to turn it into the patch that you see on the right that says official taste tester. So we have a custom patch that we want. Nobody out there makes a patch that says official taste tester. These are the things we want, but this is the shape. And we have all of these tools that are built into our machine, so why not use them? Or you have all of these tools built into your embroidery software that you have purchased. So let's go take a look at how to turn that into official taste tester. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to open up the embroidery portion of the machine. Now I'm working on the 790 is what you see here. Whether you're an 880 plus, a 700, a 590, a 700, 500, all of your embroidery functions that you're going to see here on the screen are going to be identical. So I'm going to, if you have the design on a USB stick, I'm going to open up the USB, and then I'm going to select the design. Now the first thing that I'm going to need to do is to get rid of the word piece that's in the middle. And if you see that over here on the right hand side, we have it's all glued together, and there's no real way for me to delete what's here on the inside, as I can't grab a hold of just one thing. So when the plus features came out, we received the ability to ungroup a design. Okay, so I'm going to touch the I for information. We're going to choose the ungroup function, and we're going to ungroup. And so if you see after we touch that, it's now broken everything down into individual pieces. That allows us to grab a hold of individual ones and delete what we don't want. Okay? And so we need to keep layer 1 and layer 2. Okay, so layer 1 is your placement line and layer 2 is your tack down. Okay, so we're going to group those back together. Okay, so I'm just going to hit the group icon, and wherever you're selected, it's going to add the one above it to it. That's where it's going to group. And then we can work through getting rid of the word piece here. And so I'm going to grab the letter I, and I'm going to hit the group function until I have all of the piece design in one layer. And then we have the 3, 4, and 5, which will be part of the actual embroidery of the satin stitch around the edge. Okay, so we're going to grab a hold of 3, 4, and 5 and put them all together. So now we have 3 parts of this design. The word piece is the one that we want to make disappear. So we're going to come back up to the I in the breadcrumb here, and we're going to choose the trash can, and we're going to throw it away. So now what I have is a nice empty rectangular patch that I can then fill in with my own design. So I can go ahead and we can hit the add design. We're going to grab a hold of our whisk here, and we're going to move it on over to where we want, but obviously right now it's too big. So we need to resize this So in the I function over here, we're going to choose the resize, and we'll turn our knob. Now, typically we suggest not going down more than 20%. So you always want to test first. So I'm going to take this down 25% here and move it over so that it's where I want it inside my patch. And then we can go about adding our words. Okay. So we can hit the plus sign. We're going to go out to the machine. We're going to choose the font or our lettering, and we're going to start with the word official. And we have uppercase and lowercase letters. I'm going to bring in one word at a time. Okay. I'm also going to shrink this down to, again, 40%. I've tested it. We've made sure that everything is the right size and it stitches out appropriately. And then I can move it over. And then I can go out and repeat the process of adding in. Okay. And then resize that one. And continue resizing here. And then one last time. And then resize it. Okay. If you have any questions about what I'm doing, please, please, please let me know so that you have a clear understanding. Now you could have just used the patch the way that it was. Okay. And then we have our words that we can fiddle with. I'm going to group the kitchen utensils and the words together here so that they're all where they need to be. Okay, all glued together. However, we need to look at this, and we need this official taste tester portion to actually stitch between 1 and 2. Okay, so we can come up to the I, and we earned the ability to resequence a design. Okay, with the plus functions. So I'm going to select the official taste tester layer here, and I'm going to choose the resequence, and I'm going to move it down 1. And so now what's going to happen is the embroidery design is going to lay a placement line. We're going to put our fabric down. If you want fiber form to make it a little bit stiffer, you would be able to then lay fiber form and then your fabric down and then tack it in place. Run the official taste tester portion of the design, and then we would run the, then we would trim our fabric and run the satin stitch. There is not an alignment function in the sewing, in the embroidery machine portion. So this is where something that if you really needed to fuss and wanted to make sure that you were aligned appropriately, you would definitely want to do that inside of embroidery software. Okay. And then we would be ready to embroider. Okay. And our design would be complete. And so we took a design that was not at all what this was and turned it into something different, just using the functions that are built into the machine. However, if you don't have embroidery software, if you don't have a machine that has those editing functions, but you own embroidery software or you own Toolbox, the editing portion of Toolbox, you would be able to do the same functions. Okay, so here is Bernina Embroidery Software version 8. So I actually can go in and I can select things and delete just like we did earlier. I can add in my lettering if I can spell. One second. Okay. It's hard to see. You can't see the secondary dialog box that opens up, doesn't show up on Facebook Live. So I am adding font there, but you just can't see it. And there is an alignment tool function here as well inside of, and then I can import another embroidery design. Here. And I can make this smaller and everything as well. So the same concept, just have to use your computer in order to do so. And then we would rearrange the order in which this embroiders as well. So I could easily take a hold of this and we will move it up until it lands between where it needs. And if I grab my lettering, I can also drag it up and put it where it needs. So now what would happen is when we embroider this, there's our wording. It's going to embroider our kitchen utensils, and then it's going to put in our satin stitching around the outside edge. Okay. So once you have your design created, this is how we embroider it. Okay. We're going to use 2 layers of aqua mesh. Okay, it needs to be at least 2 layers because we've got a pretty heavy satin stitch. We don't want anything to perforate. We don't want anything to pucker or move on us. So we want to then put the hoop on the machine and start the design. First thing that's going to happen is stitch a placement line. That placement line tells us where to put our fabric at. If you want it to be a little bit stiffer, you can then also put a piece of fiber form and then cover that with fabric. You're going to then run the tack down, okay, which is going to hold that all in place. Now, I would not trim my tack down fabric. I wouldn't trim the fabric yet. It says it there, but I would actually wait till my embroidery was finished in the middle, just in case you trimmed a little close and fabric starts to kind of shrink. It's depending upon how much embroidery you're going to put inside of that patch area. And then you do all your center embroidery. Before it starts to stitch the satin stitching, then you trim your fabric. And you want to trim it fairly close because we want to make sure that we can not eliminate, but keep the amount of fabric whiskers that kind of point out of our satin stitching to a minimum. And when the stitching is complete, you'll remove the hoop from the machine, and then you're going to take the project out of the hoop. Take a pair of scissors, trim as much aqua mesh away from the edge as possible. Okay, you can even take a Q-tip, a wet sponge around the edge to eliminate the rest of what is there. And then you'll be ready to put the fuse and seal on the back. You could wash it before you use it, but I usually don't want to wait for it to dry, so just running your wet sponge or Q-tip around the edge will eliminate, and when the item is washed the first time, it will, the stabilizer will disappear. Okay, we're going to cut a piece of fuse and seal that fits the size of the design. Okay, we don't want it too big. You want it to be just the right side, because if you have any excess fusible hanging outside of the badge, it's going to attach to your iron and just make things not as pretty. Okay, you're going to place the textured side of the fuse and seal to the wrong side of your badge, and you're going to iron it in place. You're going to let it cool, and once it's cool, you can then peel the paper off of the fuse and seal and then position your patch in place and then iron it as well. You want to make sure that you cover your patch with a pressing cloth before you go to iron it, and I would adhere it in place and iron it in from both the front as well as the wrong side, okay, as well. So that you can see, this here is fuse and seal. We sell it in 8 by 11, 8 by 10 sheets. Okay, so there's a paper side And then there is a non-paper side, and this is the side that you're going to iron to your patch, okay? And then peel the paper off, and then turn this over and iron, okay? Okay, so fiber form, I would put down, this piece doesn't have anything. It has no fiber form in it anyway. It has no fabric either. This is actually an example for something else. And I have been looking all morning for my patch samples, and I couldn't do it earlier this week. Forgot. So in the design, one second, let's pull up the, okay, so in the design, when we go over to embroider here, let me get the machine. So the first thing that's going to stitch is a placement line. So we stitch a placement line, and then on top of that placement line, covering up all the edges, we're going to place a piece of fiber form and a piece of fabric, okay? That fiber form is optional, okay? It's just going to add a little bit more stiffness to your design, especially when, this is a large amount of background fabric. It's not like the patch is completely embroidered. So a little bit of fiber form can help just add a little bit of stiffness to it. And then you can, once you've placed your fiber form, your fabric right side up over top of your placement line, you're going to stitch the next color stop, which is going to tack all of that in place, okay? Once that's tacked in place, I would then work through all of the steps of the actual embroidery, okay? Once my embroidery was finished, we're going to run, this particular design would run another tack down, okay? So yes, Miss Dana said, can you add a fabric to the back before you stitch again? Yes. So on this particular one here, after my word tester was done, I could put a piece of fabric on the underside of my hoop and then run this color stop, which would then run another tack down to hold that in place. Then I would trim all the fabric and fiber form that was to the outside of these tack downs, and trim as close as you can. And then once they're trimmed, you can run the satin. That's going to clean up or seal up the edge of your design. Do you use the Fuse and Seal before you wash away the stabilizer? Yes and no. You don't have to. If your intent is you really, you need this project done and it needs to be done now, you don't need to wash away the aqua mesh before you iron on the Fuse and Seal. Okay, but you can, if you have the time to wait, you can officially wash the patch, completely soak the aqua mesh away, allow it to completely dry before you apply the Fuse and Seal. Yes, so you don't have to wash it away before you use it. I hope that makes sense. And I apologize for not having my patches, because I looked at home, they weren't there, and I could have sworn they were here, and now they're not, so what's new? I really need about a month to organize all the samples and things that I have. They're all over the place. So this is that's the Fuse and Seal. And this doesn't have to be used with embroidered patches, okay? How many of you have Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts in your life? No need to sew them things on. Put a little bit of Fuse and Seal on the back of them and iron them in place, and they won't go anywhere. So no need to break out the sewing machine in order to be able to iron on those badges. Okay. So, and then voila, you would have your official taste tester badge ready to be applied to an apron. Okay. That's there. And then you can also make a patch from a design that has no fabric applique in it whatsoever. Okay. And when you want to do that, we use, and this is perfect for things that you can't really embroider through. Maybe it's an already made purse that you want to put a design onto and you just can't get it under the hoop. You just can't, or it makes your nervous wreck to actually embroider onto the item. So you use a product, you use polymesh stabilizer, and we hoop polymesh, and we embroider right into the polymesh. Okay, no fabric. And once you're finished running your embroidery, here, let me. Okay, so this is polymesh. Okay, this is my embroidery design, embroidered right onto polymesh. I can take this design and I can trim it out. And I have a bag around here somewhere that has these little flowers fused to it. So I can work through trimming away carefully the excess stabilizer or polymesh that's around. Polymesh will melt, okay? So if you use a very hot iron, okay, and I'm talking hot iron, what works really well is those Clover mini irons, you know, they get nuclear, right? We always put our finger in the wrong place on those irons. So the tip of that iron or the handle of that iron gets really, really hot. And so if you have a soldering iron or anything along like that, a wood burning iron, go raid the toolbox. You can take that right around the edges of this and it will melt the remainder of the polymesh that you can see, okay? And that will just immediately disappear. And then you can cut a piece of fusion seal that is the same size and shape as your applique, and then you can iron this to whatever you wanted to iron this to, okay? So it doesn't have to have a fabric base to it, okay? Your patch could be all thread, okay? So this little guy right here there's no fabric whatsoever in this. This is all thread. Okay. Just don't cut too close and cut your stitching, because then things are going to start to unravel. Okay. And so I could then iron this to whatever I wanted. Okay. Definitely couldn't embroider that through a surfboard, but I could iron it to a surfboard if I wanted. So that is just a way. You have to have something that's not going to disappear to hold on to your stitching. So that's what the polymesh becomes. Okay, so that polymesh becomes the base and becomes your fabric that we use for those particular designs. Now, as a question, let's see here. Let me pull this up. Is where do you find badges and patches and things along that line? So, on Embroidery Online, okay, you have a couple of design collections that are designed to be badges and patches. So the first one up here is going to be Cotton and Steel. It's a collection called Scout by Cotton and Steel. And in here there are a bunch of different little designs, but these are the two bases that you could apply those particular designs to. Okay. Give me 1 second and I will. So that gives you basically a square and a a circle and a hexagon. Let me get my shapes together right. You can also come to the Embroidery Online site and you type in the word patch. Up will come a couple of collections. This one here comes from a collection called Hodgepodge Patches. Okay, there's only 3 patches in there. But it gives you, you know, it's only 3 patches, 3 of which you may not embroider, but it gives you a square, and 2 different rectangles. Okay. And then you have, the other one is going to be, there are sewing patches. Okay. And then this collection has 3 patches that are sewing related, but again, that gives you a square, a circle, and a hexagon. Okay. That are there. And so that is, again, you can easily remove them and replace them with whatever shape you wanted. These do have a little extra decorative stitching around, kind of a inside the satin stitching that you could delete as well if you didn't want that particular accent piece. Do I have questions about making things a patch? Okay. It's not hard. Just having the right product and mostly having fuse and seal is going to be your best option there for making a patch. Okay, because it does not require any sewing once you iron it in place. Okay. I will try to locate the purse and exam and stuff. Obviously, I'll have to look more at home, dig in a couple more boxes, and see if I can't locate the designs. And if I do, specifically that purse design. Yes, you can use Badge Master in place of the Aquamesh if you wanted. You can also use one Badge Master and one Aquamesh if you didn't want to use both Aquamesh. Okay, it doesn't have to be just Aquamesh. You can use one or the other as long as it's a wash away. We just don't like to use Badge Master by itself because it will perforate. So that last bit of satin stitching that goes around the outside edge, depending upon how much satin stitching is there and that type of thing, it could perforate and then pop out of the hoop before you're ready for it, which is why we usually use Aquamesh, okay, for that aspect. But it's completely, you can use one of each. Or take your chances with just Badge Master. Okay. Well, that's all I have for you. Quick and easy this morning on how to make patches and badges for you. So this little guy, he's going to have to become something. He's too cute. But yes. Use those embroidery features, the editing features that you have built into your machine, and for those that own embroidery software, whether it's Toolbox, version 7, 8 from Bernina, or what other brand you may own, you can easily take the base design, remove what you don't want, and add in what you do want. Just make sure that you get it all sequenced in the right order so that it's your placement, your tack down, your actual patch design, and then the satin stitching. Okay, we want the satin stitching to be the last thing that embroiders. So, well, I want to thank everybody for joining me this morning, and I hope that you learned a little bit of something, and that I will hopefully see everybody soon. Some of you I will see in just a little bit in class, and that I hope you have a great weekend. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I can't express my gratitude enough as you join me here every Saturday morning. I will be posting this presentation up on the Material Girls website, and the links in there will link you to the design collections as well as stabilizers and things along that lines as well, in case you don't want to wait. There it is. So All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Have a great day, and we will see you soon. Bye, everybody.